What's up, Rockstars? Welcome to my review of Darkest Dungeon by Mythic Games. This has been a slew of weird circumstances to get here, but it's finally here. People are finally getting it, and I'm going to tell you what I think about it after a ton of play. To start things out, I'd like a quick shout out to my sponsors, Into the Am. They make cool shirts like this. It's linked down below. And Game Work Create. They will print STL files for you, and you can also get board games on there as well. Go to check that out, and the link in the description below as well. And yeah, let's just, talk about this game before we dive into my pros and my cons and my final thoughts. First of all, if you're new to the channel, this is like one of the first games you've probably backed, perhaps something like that. I know a lot of people came from the video game side of things. I was a fan of the video game long before this was ever announced. I put way too many hours grinding resources to build buildings and have an A team and a B team and a C team because my A and B team constantly died and got sick and all that kind of stuff. So suffice it to say, this is not the usual circumstance to get the game. I'm not going to get into any of that, however. I'm reviewing the game as a product, and that is it. So it's outside of the realm of Mythic Games per se. I'll mention it briefly in my summary, but that's about it. So don't come here looking for that. This is just about the game and what I think about this game on my table right now. Additionally, I have it laid out exactly how I play it. I play it on this small of a table. It does actually compact pretty well. This is literally a session of the game, exactly how I lay it out and exactly where I left it last time I played. So I actually keep the stack of tiles here just so it's right there. Same with the stack of room tiles. So just be aware that you could, make this smaller, of course. But, and I keep the tokens in baggies. We'll talk about tokens in a bit. This is how I play. So FYI on that as well. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them down below and I'll do my best to answer them. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into the pros and the cons. What's good, what's bad? Now, the first thing that you're going to see when you first open this box of game, especially the miniature portion of it, but even all the cards, is the art, the miniatures. They all look fantastic. This is a very pretty looking game to just sit here and look at. The miniatures look lovely. They're very high quality, exactly what you would expect from Mythic Games. They typically put a lot of money and effort into it. Sculpted bases, fairly dynamic poses, but also in a smart way, so they're not 18 million parts, or some of them are in fact even, just a single mold, but the detail, the crispness, it's all there, and it very much matches the art of the game, including, of course, the art on your character cards and your abilities and, the Hamlet, and just everything about this screams Darkest Dungeon and quality. It actually looks really nice and it plays quite well. So everything on the table, fantastic. Now, I will mention this, and I know this angle isn't great for it, so I'm going to include pictures and stuff like that throughout this review. And you'll notice this image right here. This is how I'm sitting here looking at this game when I'm not filming a review. In other words, I don't have these harsh lights on it. This is still how I see it, just from the light in my game room here. It's super shiny. It's one of the most shiniest linen ever. And on top of that, Darkest Dungeon is very, very dark. And the problem with that, and this often happens with prototypes, but not necessarily final productions. Deep Madness was a famous one for this as well, where it's just too dark. It's very hard to see that stress meter. It's very hard to see sometimes the part where you're supposed to put your skill cards. All of that just gets washed out. It just looks like a one shine. Even when it's not, it's so dim. There's just not enough contrast there. It's very hard actually to work with, and it's kind of difficult to get everything lined up well. Now, you're not messing with this a whole lot. I mean, you slide the stress, but besides that, your cards are just sitting there. So it's not a huge thing, but it's definitely something I noticed, especially the cards as well, the enemy cards. Looking across from those, all I see is a reflection, and it's very hard to kind of read it at times. It's a very reflective game for how dark it is, and it's a little too dark at times. Now, I have a prop for this next one, but this rulebook, no index. Now, I actually had a conversation with Mythic Games a while back. Got in a little bit of an argument, actually, with one of their helpers. because I wanted an index in every single game they make. I want an index in every single game in all of these. Because at the end of the day, a rulebook serves two purposes. To teach you how to play, but also as a data lookup table, something you need to look up while you're playing. And you need to pause the game often to go and look it up, so it needs to be very quick to look for things. And without an index, that can be very difficult. So there's no index in there. That's an automatic negative on the rulebook. Regardless of anything else I say of the rulebook, there's no index. It's an auto fail. It needs an index. It's required, and I will never accept a rulebook without it. If your rulebook is only 2 pages, all that means is you have a super easy index. You should still have it. I'm not giving up on that. Indexes all the time, every time, no matter what. So, fail on that. Now, sadly, there's more wrong with this rulebook than just the lack of an index. It fails at a lot of things. It's okay. It's not the worst. But saying it's not the worst is a pretty low bar when I've had rulebooks that aren't even all translated into English and have commentator notes within them. So yeah, no, this is not great. A lot of things come up very easily in play. For instance, one of the main things you see on these tiles is an end of turn effect. For instance, like a healing you found or something like that. At the end of your turn, you heal 3 health or whatever, right? If you're standing there and you end your turn there. But then the rulebook also says that, hey, once the last enemy's done, the game's over. Now, you have to ask, do I get an end turn or an end of turn step of my turn there? Or does it cut my turn off right there regardless if I'd only done one action, right? There's all these kind of things here where it's like, do I heal at the end of that? Do I not? The rulebook isn't going to tell you that. And a host of other things too. There are actually symbols on this game board that are not in there from past iterations, back when they were playing with like having elevation and stuff like that. All of that is still on these game tiles as a symbol. And it's not even touched. It's not even mentioned. It has no comment in the rulebook. There's whole cards that don't as well. Some of the rune cards, it doesn't explain. It's playable. I don't want to say it's not playable. A lot of them are edge cases, but it's certainly there and it's certainly felt. You're going to have to house rule a lot of this. Between that and a few misprints, it feels kind of sloppy, which isn't a surprise to maybe some long-term backers, but it is kind of unfortunate to see those just glaringly obvious things that just weren't ever touched up for who knows why. And it's really unfortunate to have that kind of mar the experience of this, because otherwise I think there's actually quite a lot of good. Speaking of the good, the strategy in this game, the turn-to-turn things that you're deciding, is actually really good, and it's a blast. It's a lot of fun. For instance, you can make combos that just work either on your character. For instance, the Grave Robber here, I have Poison Dart 2 and Throw Dagger 3. Those are very high-level, really good combo, because the Poison Dart does some damage, but it also puts a Blight dot on them, or damage over time, where they are now blighted, essentially poison. Then I follow up with a Throw Dagger, which does extra damage to poison. So you can do a 1-2 thing and kind of make sure you do extras. Speaking of which, they both have a range of 1 to 2, so I can just follow one up with the other and typically kill an enemy either right out or based off the bleed or the blight that I just added. But there's more than that, because there's also a mark. A mark allows you to critical the enemy better, but additionally, some things may interact with it. For instance, the Throw Dagger also does extra damage to marked. We have a bounty hunter that's constantly marking his target, and so I can actually interact with the bounty hunter and work with him to do more. But the nuance gets better than that. For instance, we actually have a really nice team, I feel, of healers, because we have the occultist here that has his weird reconstruction. What that does is it heals you up for like quite a bit, like a good 5 to 10 health. Just even at the mid-level one there, but it makes you bleed. In other words, he's like kind of messy with it. It's some weird reconstruction, okay? So you're healed, but you're also bleeding now, so you're going to lose some of that. However, my Plague Doctor has a battlefield medicine that heals just a little bit, but cures all bleed. So what do? We heal a heavy amount with Occultist, we follow up with Battlefield Bleed, it tops it off and removes all of the bleed that the Weird Construction did, so we can use Weird Construction without any negatives at all. It's just a straight up heal. And that kind of interaction only happens because we have these two characters with the skills we picked, because there's a variety of skills you can pick from that. I can't stress that enough, how fun it is to make up a team like that and work together like that, where we're like, okay, if you mark the target and then do finish him, you can still mark him, you can do some damage, but then I'm going to follow up with a Poison Dart and a Throw Dagger, but you're actually really hurt too, so if you can move there to do that, then the cultist can do the Weird Reconstruction, and then I'll follow up with the Plague Doctor's Battlefield Medicine. And you're working through all that, and the positioning matters so much. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but where you are on the map and where you are on the initiative track, whether, you're ranged or defensive or aggressive or whatever, is super important. And it all goes into play where you're constantly talking with your teammates, constantly. More than most dungeon crawls, I would say, actually. A lot of dungeon crawls, you're just kind of doing your thing and you do that thing. But in this one, it's quite different on what you're doing. Sometimes the plague doctor has to decide, do I want to heal that bleed? Or maybe you're going to bleed for a little bit because I want to do my blinding gas, which stuns the enemy so they won't act. Because I see that they're right there and I don't want them to interact next time. So I'm going to blind them so that they're not interacting, and then we'll just heal next time. You're going to get one bleed. It's fine. I'll still heal you a little bit with my battlefield medicines. And you're having that conversation constantly. It's really, really good. It is not the best I've had. I think Aeon Trespass Odyssey does that better with its hard co-op mechanics and token placement. But it is actually a fairly close second, I feel, of recent memory at least. Like, this is really, really well. You can make a team that interacts where every single action you take is in conjunction with everybody else's actions to make kind of a master plan of the board. To top it off, the scenarios themselves are actually pretty interesting. Some of them, like I said, give you a healing fountain where if you end your turn in that zone, then you can, gain some healing, so you're tempted to do that and maybe even not be as aggressive because of that. Or this scenario right here, which I actually just happened to draw. It's one of my favorite ones. I even mentioned it in the detailed one, but you are often split apart with your party. And I know this doesn't sound like Darkest Dungeon, but we'll talk about that, I promise. Where, two people are here and two people are here, and all of this right here is really dark and stressful. So if you end your turn there, you're stressed and there's enemies in between. So then you have to decide, are we going to kill that enemy in the go, or are you going to try to rush through and essentially waste a turn? You only have 4 turns. We'll talk about that in a bit as well, to get out of the stress zone. And then actually there's a part here where you're de-stressing. But then there's a treasure chest over here in another stress zone. So you're going to get stressed if you get that treasure, but perhaps it's worth it for some great gold, because gold is glorious here. Gold has essentially replaced a lot of the parchments and paintings and stuff like that you get in the video game to build stuff and really do anything in the hamlet. So very, very useful, or maybe even a provision, because God knows you need some more food or a shovel or a torch. So it's really nice that it does stuff like that, splitting up the party, making you start in different locations, having one side of the map be really dark and stressful for a few people and then not for others. And it's based off, again, your position and where you're at. Just really, really cool, I think, that they've done this kind of stuff here, and it makes it just all the more interesting when it comes to positioning and stuff like that. Now, I've mentioned this a few times, but the initiative track, as I'm calling it, or, the support, range, defense, and aggressive track for both heroes and enemies is fantastic, because what you do is you have these initiative cards here, and you draw them, and all they say is hero or enemy. That's it. Because you go from aggressive to support, so from right to left, or from left to right, depending on if you're enemies or the heroes, which means you don't know if you're going to be the next person to go, but you are going to be the next person to go. In other words, you don't know if this is a hero or not. In other words, I might go, or it might be an enemy. It might be 3 enemies before we go. It might be all of us before an enemy goes. But we do know the next enemy and the next person that goes. And that halfway knowledge is so huge. I talked about blinding people before. You can know exactly, oh, this massive ghoul, this guy here, this big bad monster is going next. We don't want to do that. Now, he might be after all of us go. We don't know. But we know if we draw an enemy card, he's going next. So then I have to decide, do we want to blind him? Do we want, or stun him, I apologize. Do we want to, make it to where he can't interact? Or perhaps it's, the cultist goes next and he's just going to heal. And so if he's just going to heal, then we're not going to be doing any damage. So maybe we just need to position in the healing fountain, and it affects everything about that. But it's still interesting enough to where you don't have all of the information. So it's slightly deterministic while also still being fun. You get kind of the benefits of both, and I very, very much enjoy that. It was a great addition to this game to really have that order be set. Aggressive, support, or defensive, ranged, and support in that order for both, so you know exactly the enemy that's going to happen, but you don't know when, and you don't know how as well. So very cool to kind of use that information and discuss that at the table. Again, it's fostering that I'm at a table with my friends and family. We're having a good time. We got some food, we got some drinks, and we're just enjoying playing this game and strategizing and interacting with one another. It's fantastic. It's really, really, really good. Another thing that's really nice that I appreciate personally is the turns are fast. You do 2 actions. You can move and you can attack. You can attack twice, but if you do, you can't use the same skills. You can't use Battlefield Medicine 2. I can't just throw daggers. I have to poison dart and then throw dagger. One or the other, or both, but I can't do 2 of the same one. And all that kind of stuff, again, adds to the strategy, but it just makes it zippy, makes it fast, especially because typically you're discussing things during other people's turns. And so you come up then. So it's not like it gets to you and you guys have no idea what was going to happen. You know, you knew exactly what the enemy was doing or you know, who was going to go next. You kind of already have a plan of attack. We didn't get any AP at all ever once with this game. You're constantly kind of deciding what to do and then you just do it. The dice rolls, the combat, it's just a roll and you go, you move about your business. That's it. That was a critical. That was amazing. I'm very happy I got that. Yay. Less stress. But no, seriously, like it's really nice and quick. And I know a lot of people like a very, very nuanced, mechanical where you're moving a lot of things, manipulating a lot of things combat. This is very much a strategic, I'm going to do this, when it comes to strategy. And then, okay, that didn't work out. We're going to do this instead. You know, a plan A, plan B kind of thing. So a lot of that goes before the die roll, in other words, instead of after the die roll. But, yeah, it just goes real quick. You're not sitting around waiting for somebody else to do it. There's never really a chance for you to get up and like, you know, just go make a sandwich, come back, catch me up on what happened kind of thing. For the most part, they're going to be waiting on you, unless you make a really quick sandwich. We're kind of getting towards one of my most hated parts of this game. So let's go in and do a few more positives. The turn or the round limit of 4. In other words, you have 4 rounds, and if you don't finish it by then you failed that room. You have to redo the entire thing. Is actually really good. It prevents like a spam healing where at the end you just heal. You can still do that. Like if you have one enemy left and you can just keep stunning him and another person can heal and you're done by round 3, well then you can use the rest of round 3 to heal and then most of round 4 to heal and then kill the guy. You can strategize it, right? Or go get a treasure chest, stuff like that. But you can't just sit there and keep doing it. And it keeps that sense of urgency. You can't just dilly-dally around and kind of turtle your way through this. You have to go get these guys. You have to go finish the mission. Interact with what you need to interact with. Do what you need to do to finish that, because after just 4 rounds, it's over and you move on to the next one. So it's great that you get all these different, combat scenarios and stuff like that. But it's zippy and it's fast-paced. And you feel like it's fast-paced. And I actually really appreciate that. I think it keeps a sense of urgency up, and it prevents abuse of any systems at play as well, because you're just hard limited. Now, I'm going to compare this to the video game a little bit in just a moment, but the slow progression is really great. In other words, you get constant progression in the fact that you finish that, you get an XP, finish that, you got some gold. But then the aim of the game is slow progression through a campaign, whether it's through the hamlet and upgrading buildings and making that a better place to suit your needs and to heal up and to get better, or the slow upgrade of your characters, because you can actually level up 2 different ways. You can level up your character themselves from level 1 to level 2 and then eventually level 3, where you get more dodge, you get more health, you might get more movement, more resistances. You just become a better, more tougher person. But you can also upgrade individual skills from level 1, 2, and 3 so that you can actually kind of level up as you go around. So you feel stronger all the time. You're building up your city, but the hamlet doesn't take a whole lot of time, which is nice, but it's a nice slow build up, which I really appreciate. You're constantly doing something. You're rarely going to the hamlet and not doing anything. You're always either getting more gold, upgrading a building, leveling up, healing up, doing something, right? Which is really nice. And then over time, you feel stronger and you can start dishing out some crazy damage, which is a lot of fun. Now, that slow progression actually is not grindy. One of my problems actually with the video game is how grindy it can be. You can go through with some, C, D tier team, level 1 guys, just because you're trying to get some gold or trying to get some, paintings or whatever, all these resources to grind. And then of course it takes, several different rounds to heal all of your guys from all the stress and the diseases and the quirks and all that. And so you're kind of running with multiple teams going through junk. Just 90% of that game is really just grind with about 10% of raw progression. Now that's kind of fun in a single player game, and I've played a lot of time in that actually. But it is definitely a grind fest. It really is. It's one of those games that its length is there because of how long it takes to get through things. The length of the campaign is actually fairly significant because if you see here, you're doing 2 quests and then the boss, 2 quests and then the boss, 2 quests. Like it keeps going and you finally do the final boss, right? So it's like it's quite a bit. But each quest isn't just one battle. It's not just this. This might just be the first room, and then we got to explore here, and then oh wow, we have a treasure room, so we're doing that, and then maybe we backtrack here and go up here, and then we have to do another thing, and so you're constantly doing multiple battles per quest. If that makes sense. Typically at least 3 to get the XP if you can manage it. Of course, you can always leave ahead of time. But yeah, it's not as grindy, and I really appreciate that. Okay, so this leads into one of my biggest frustrations, but this is actually a positive. While the game is actually the campaign is fairly lengthy, which is really nice. I mean, you get to kind of spend a lot of time with your characters. It hurts when they die. It very much does, because then you feel like you're playing suboptimally, just like the video game, where you're like, oh, well, I don't have my A team now. This is definitely, all right, Billy, you're off the bench. Come on, kind of thing. They do instantly kind of level up a little bit. They can only do 2 upgrades, but it's impactful, but it's nice. I do like the length. You're in this for quite a while. I did not get bored of the ruins, so there is that. However, even Wave 1 comes with a expansion that you can introduce a new area with, and of course there's more as well. But honestly, it wasn't that bad, even just going through the ruins, because you are kind of playing with the monsters level up, and you get introduced to new ones like this ghoul here and stuff like that. It's a level 2 monster, so there's enough changing to where I was still happy with it. Again, eventually, one of your guys are gonna die, and you're playing a different character and whatnot. So I liked it. The helmet's always changing, but it's easily saved, which is nice. At the end of the day, you get a save sheet. Here's actually my current one. There is a giant booklet of these, and I very much appreciate that. I cannot stand when games only give you like 3. It's like, do you just want me to not play your game? You just don't expect me to play your game? There's tons of these in here, so you can make a new one each time, and it tracks where your stress is, any diseases you have or anything like that. And then you put them in a tuck box. One moment. So here is the save box, the tuck box that you get for this. They're all tuck boxes. Tuck boxes refers to this little tuck here. And I absolutely, fundamentally hate tuck boxes. They are invariably a bad design because no matter what you do, you're damaging them. Even just opening this, there's you see the little crinkle in here? There's that little indent there where your finger goes because you have to push down and it bends it and, grinds against it and all that. But they're kind of cheap. I'm holding it this way because mine is like this. This is actually from me building it after the unboxing. This happened like the moment I tried to open it back again. Because again, all the tuck boxes do are you gotta like bend them and like push them in and tuck them in and do all this stupid crap. So this is my save box. When you level up, you're often leveling up your skills, but you don't have, you have a ton of skills and all these different levels in the skills, but if you want to change them out, if you want to level them up, then you're opening this constantly. And guess what? It's another tuck box. So this is my current tuck box of this, because you have to come in here, and even then, it's like, do you see now I opened it. It's not being able, because there's stuff so full of cards, and there's so little freaking space here, and it's so stupid, and I hate these things, that I can't hardly open it like this. And so I went on the side to open like that, and it just ripped right off. This is garbage. I hate these. I hate these. If you have these in your board game, I hate your storage in your board game. I dislike these tuck boxes so incredibly much. You know how much money we spend on these games? You know how much money these things cost? And then you ruin it. You know how much this hurts me? I hate it. I hate it. It's dumb. It's stupid. I hate tuck boxes. And you get a ton of them. Every card is stored in a freaking tuck box. And I would rather them be loose and in baggies. I hate tuck boxes. Now, I put this as a negative because generally speaking, as far as game design goes, this is a negative. However, like Nemesis, there are times where people enjoy the randomness because it fits the theme in their head or what they're wanting out of the game. And as far as brutal difficulty goes, this game is brutal with the dice. There is zero manipulation and very little mitigation. Very, very little. Technically, you can have something like a solar bracer that increases your crit or increases your accuracy, but then it turns into a negative until you use it again. So it's very rare you can even do that, and that's only if you have one. And manipulation is non-existent. So you roll the die, And I got a 2. That's great. What you roll, though, is what you get. And so if you miss that big heal, you miss the big heal. There's no choice. There's no player agency there. You just got the bad luck. Now, again, that fits the theme of the video game. I understand that. And so don't read too into the positive or negative. In fact, this might be a positive for you if that's what you're seeking, which a lot of people who appreciate the Darkest Dungeon IP are seeking that kind of brutal randomness, right? But suffice it to say, like, it is definitely random with these dice roll, and it can be a cruel mistress indeed. That being said, I have not found this board game nearly as punishing as the video game. The video game is absolutely brutal. It just tears you up. There is very little chance that you're going to be going through, unless you got a really good seed or something like that, where you're going through with one team and they can just keep going in like this. Like this is, you pretty much run team. You don't have the A team, B team, or C team, or D team. And so because of that, you can generally, if you focus, recover most of your stuff in the hamlet. You can kind of take care of yourself and keep going through with the characters you have. That fits the board game very well, and you still get that brutalness with the die, of course, but it's not as board wiping, everybody's dead, restart with, level 1 heroes, good luck with the stagecoach game, that the video game is. The video game you can just wipe quite easily. The most dangerous part is going to a boss. That's probably the one case in the board game where the boss can kind of be as difficult as that, because the boss is a one-time thing. You either beat him or it's game over. So that is probably the closest the board game gets to the video game as far as difficulty. And otherwise, you are typically hurt. You're never really just at full health and zero stress and having a merry time of everything. You're always getting hurt. Every curio, except for a few, is very, very bad, and you're always got quirks and diseases and all sorts of stuff. It gets a lot of that, and you're bleeding and blighted and at half health and have an affliction and all this other stuff that you would come to expect from Darkest Dungeon. But you can go and heal most of that and kind of be on your way, as opposed to having to shelve them and, or maybe he's completely ruined pretty much, and it's not worth the resources to, get rid of the 3 quirks plus the disease plus, all this other. I mean, it's just. I appreciated the level of difficulty this was, and it can be difficult, but it is not as brutal as a video game, which I appreciate, especially in the board game environment where it's not just me playing solo player. Now, speaking of the bosses, they're actually quite good and quite varied. The first one we went through was the Prophet. And one of the things that the bosses do are they have 2 abilities. They have one that affects the hamlet and one that affects the dungeon. What he did is essentially make you stressed. So you recovered 1 less in the hamlet and you got 2 stress automatically every time you delved into the ruins. So you would just go in there and you would be stressed, and then you could recover less stress on your way out. So we constantly had stress. We were rarely at 0. And that colored all the quests we were a part of. That was the unique thing for him that's ever present, the imminent threat, as they're called, for the whole act, the whole level of that dungeon. And I really do appreciate that. Not only is that different from, the Fanatic or the Necromancer or anything like that, but the actual scenario you play the bosses at is quite unique as well. They act differently. They get multiple activations. They're doing different things. For him, you're kind of in the church area with the Prophet, right? And you have all of the pews, and essentially you randomly distribute them out each round, and then he does an attack at the very end that attacks every zone that's in. So there were all these no-no zones where you didn't want to be stuck in that zone when that went off or you get really hurt. So that was fundamentally different than anything else prior to that. And of course, you have to get to the boss to actually fight him, so you're not going in, fully healed up or anything like that. And they're always at the edge, so you do have to go through some stuff. It's very well done, and I very much appreciated the bosses and just how unique they all were. That was actually quite nice. Overall, I feel this is a great translation from the video game to the board game. Yes, it is different. You're playing on a 3D map, and you're starting in different locations, and it's multiplayer, and not just like PvP. It's like I'm controlling one character, you're controlling one character. Yet it actually captures every fundamental thing that I think you want out of Darkest Dungeon. You want the difficulty, it's there. You want the interplay between characters and position, it's there. You want the super focus on dots because they go through armor, it's there. But then they removed all the stuff that just would bog down a board game, like corpses, for instance. Corpses aren't in here. They're a big part of the video game. But I feel like their omission is smart here, and I feel like it just would mess it up. Instead, as you kill people, they just move up as if the corpse was removed in the video game. So there's simplifications where it needs to be, but overall, I think this really captures it. It feels like Darkest Dungeon. It does, and it's not just the art, it's not just the minis, it's the mechanics. It's going through the room and having to scout out and, bring provisions and, get new heroes when they die and, go over and de-stress and get annoyed by this little, caretaker jerk that takes up the spot in the abbey that you want, or, whatever it might be. It's really nice. Dreading curio, but also being excited, but kind of not by treasure rooms because you have to fight, but then you get gold. I mean, it's all there, and it's all really, really great. I think they did a fantastic job bringing it to a board game, and then also changing things to accommodate great table play. I kind of talked about that early on, but just the interactions you're having with people is fantastic. It's not a game where I'm playing this and I'm playing essentially solo player Darkest Dungeon, and they're playing solo player Darkest Dungeon, and they're playing solo player Darkest Dungeon. It's us playing Darkest Dungeon together in a physical format, which is exactly what you would want. Very impressed with all of that, actually. Now, this is something I wanted to note at the very end, because I know people are going to ask about it, and I know it's been brought up by a lot of people, and that is the upkeep. I will say that if you are sensitive to upkeep, this will trigger you, essentially. So you do get stuff like, you can have one attack that marks them and debuffs them and buffs you and removes a dot, or something like that, right? So you're doing like all these different things. Or it moves you back, so, okay, I got pushed back, and then, I got to get these tokens and put them there and all that. Now, I think a lot of people, and I was included in this, when you're looking at that, you're thinking solo player, right? You're thinking, I have to do all that. But you don't. There's other people at the table, so we just mitigate it. If Bob over here does that ability and do all that, okay, well, I'll put the debuffs and the mark on them, and then Kim can change there, and and then James over here can put on his own debuffs or wounds or whatever it might be, right? There's enough people to where it doesn't actually take that long, and you divvy it out fairly easily. And the one thing I think it affected me by was setup time. This actually sets up pretty quick. This is not that, you can see that it's not that bad, right? This is exactly how I set it up. Most of them, even though they're in tuck boxes, are quite organized. So you just put them in there, you take them out, you put them up. I do keep them in baggies, because setting them up is kind of annoying, and so you do kind of fish in here. I find that nicer than having to set them up, because you're constantly taking them out and putting them back in, and maintaining those piles is kind of annoying. And so we just keep them in the bag and take them out as needed. It's not that bad. It takes up less table space too when they're like that. So I was fine with it. I didn't have a problem with it, especially playing with multiple people. If you solo play, that might be a different scenario, or if you're very sensitive to upkeep stuff. Every time it's my turn, I take a bleed, I take a blight, my debuff goes down, and my mark goes down, and then I need to add the wounds for that there, and then put them up in the bag or whatever. So like there is that for sure. Or I have all these dots in this person, but then they move, and so you have to move it with them. But honestly, with enough people, it's not that bad. Okay, so final thoughts, summary of everything. What are my thoughts looking at this, playing this for a lot of hours actually now with my family, and where am I at with it? Well, I think as far as Mythic Games is concerned, this is their best sloppy masterpiece yet. If you don't know, Mythic Games often has what I feel are great games, great ideas, great concepts. You'll see a whole lot of Joan of Arc, and you'll see stuff like Darkest Dungeon here. I've backed most of their games, everything from Hell, Super Fantasy Brawl, all that stuff. I'm all down with it. They make the kind of games that I'm interested in. So if you see the games behind me and you think those are kind of cool, you'll probably like Darkest Dungeon. It's pretty cool. But they always fail to really stick the landing when it comes to polish and fine-tuning. So stuff like the crappy tuck boxes, or the lackluster rulebook, or a few of the misprints that are here, or, whatever it is. Mythic Games doesn't ever release anything without a 1.5, right? Isn't that the whole idea is, just wait for the 1.5 where they fix everything they got wrong the first time. It doesn't mean the game is bad, but it does mean it's more difficult to enjoy starting out. Once you get playing, you get kind of used to it. You've house ruled everything. You're good to go. But otherwise, it can be a lot. So you have to kind of go in knowing that it is going to be a little sloppy, especially at first. But honestly, afterwards, it plays really darn smooth, and it's quite enjoyable, to the point where because of the interplay with people, and because, I mean, that's why we're here, because we love board games, right? We love playing with friends and family and people we enjoy and have a good time with. Being able to play that with, experience Darkest Dungeon with them means I would play this over the video game pretty much any day. If you gave me the choice of playing with some people on the board game or playing alone on the video game, I would pick the board game 100% of the time. It is really enjoyable. I've had a blast playing this. Yes, I hate the tug boxes. Yes, I dislike a lot of the problems with how dim it is, or, some of the upkeep maybe, or, this and that. But honestly, guys, it is really, really fun to go through here and explore this and work within the scenarios and manage our team and manage the hamlet and kind of go about and get stronger and fight the next boss and get to them and get that upgrade you've been wanting and find that combo that you've enjoyed, or trying different combos, or just anything, all of it, everything you like out of Darkest Dungeon is pretty much here that you get to enjoy and experience with others. And for that alone, hats off to Mythic Games. They did a great job on this. I just wish they could have polished it a little bit more. And of course, then there is all that other stuff that I'm not mentioning here that you can have your own opinion on. I think we all do. So anyway, that's my review of Darkest Dungeon, the board game. Had a lot of fun with it. I will continue to have fun with it. My son's going to see this on the table, and he's going to ask to have another game night because it's just that much fun. So let me know if you have any questions, of course, or any comments. And with that, I'll go on and let you guys go. Have a great rest of your day. Take care, guys.